July the 9th, 1923. One egg cost 800 Reichsmark, and a pound of pork cost 9,000 Reichsmark. The next day they were to cost many times that amount. Wages couldn't keep up with the prices, and the Reichsmark lost its value by the hour, also as an international currency. On November the 20th, 1923, $1 cost 4.2 trillion Reichsmark. This astronomical figure could only mean one thing for the German people: widespread misery and suffering. How does inflation occur? As long as the supply of money and goods in an economy develop at the same pace, prices remain stable. But if the supply of money grows faster than the production of goods, prices start to climb. The greater the imbalance between the supply of money and goods, the faster prices rise. This development is characteristic of inflation. On August 1st, 1914, Germany declared war on Russia. Kaiser Wilhelm II helped to stir up enthusiasm for the war by saying, "I don't know political parties anymore, I only know Germans." The war cost a lot of money and became more expensive each year. The government therefore sold bonds to the public on a grand scale. By attracting people's savings in this way, the war effort was financed, but the amount of money available for purchasing goods also increased. In addition, the Reichsbank provided abundant credit to government and industry. The currency was no longer backed by gold. That had been abandoned by law at the start of the war. The money supply rose, unlike the supply of consumer goods. For a time, maximum prices decreed by the government prevented inflation from getting out of hand. The problem of inflation only escalated dangerously after the war had been lost, as the state financed its growing expenditure through the central bank's printing press. The Allies gave Germany sole blame for the war and imposed heavy reparations. In the years of inflation up to 1923, 1/10 of Germany's national income had to be used to pay the reparation burdens. In addition, the government had to make interest and redemption payments on the loans it had raised during the war, and simultaneously take up large credits to implement social welfare programs and measures aimed at combating unemployment. Most of this spending was financed by the Reichsbank by simply printing more and more banknotes. The Germans placed their hopes on their foreign minister, Walter Rathenau. Many people believed he could negotiate a reduction in the debt burden. But a shocking event occurred on June the 24th, 1922. Rathenau was assassinated by right-wing extremists. Germany's difficult political situation now turned into a crisis of confidence. This was when the dramatic fall in the currency's value, known as hyperinflation, began. The exchange rate of the Reichsmark fell. Domestic prices rose. The Reichsbank continued to grant credit to government and industry. It financed the higher price level. Germany fell behind with its reparation payments. In January 1923, French and Belgian troops occupied Germany's industrial Ruhr area. The German population responded to the occupation with passive resistance, which the government supported, again with money borrowed from the Reichsbank. The printing presses could no longer print the massive volume of banknotes needed. Many local authorities and some firms issued their own money, mostly without authorization. The production of goods, which had picked up only slowly following defeat in the war, couldn't keep pace with the ever more rapidly growing supply of money. Furthermore, the galloping depreciation of the currency caused people to spend it as fast as they could. The velocity of circulation of money increased rapidly. Prices skyrocketed. A loaf of bread, which had cost just 50 pfennigs in 1919, cost more than 5 billion Reichsmark in October 1923, and prices continued to rise. Finally, money became so worthless that it was cheaper to burn it than to use it to buy fuel. Money had largely lost its function. People turned to bartering. Eggs and butter for theatre tickets. Because of its galloping depreciation, the Reichsmark no longer offered companies a firm basis for their cost calculations. Inflation consumed their profits, so that less and less money remained for investment. This situation took a dramatic turn for the worse in mid-1922. Soaring costs, including wages, obliterated financial reserves overnight. Hyperinflation was accompanied by suffering and want. The main victims were pensioners and individuals living on fixed, mostly small incomes. Many people were dependent on the charity of others in order to survive. They had to sell their furniture so that they could at least buy the bare necessities. The consequences of hyperinflation led many Germans to emigrate, especially to the USA, which eased its immigration laws in 1923. In autumn 1923, the social and political situation reached a dramatic crisis. The government was at last forced to introduce a currency reform. A new and stable currency was introduced, the Rentenmark. The new currency was backed by an interest-bearing land charge imposed on all German industry and agriculture. The government put its finances back on a sound footing, and credit financing via the printing press ceased. For the government, inflation had more benefits than drawbacks. The debts which it had incurred since the beginning of the war were reduced almost to zero by inflation. The big losers were individuals who had invested in government bonds. Following currency reform, they were repaid at best a fraction of the